I never imagined love would come to me like this, unexpected, layered in silence and wrapped in shame. My name is Caleb. I'm 21, a quiet type, always observant, always in my head. I live with my mother and her husband, Daniel. He's been my stepfather since I was 16. Daniel isn't just the man my mother married. He became something else, something bigger. He was the calm in the storm when high school broke me down. He taught me how to shave, how to drive, how to fake confidence. He was always there, not as a father, not as a friend, but something unnamed. Something I didn't let myself define for years. My mother, Marlene, is warm but absent. Her job in corporate healthcare keeps her traveling, always chasing the next title. She's not cold, she just exists more in her laptop than in our living room. When I was younger, I resented her for it. Now, I think I just accept that love shows up differently for everyone. But Daniel? Daniel was always present. He noticed things, like when I stopped eating during exam season, or when I cut my arm on purpose in 10th grade and lied about it being from the dog. He looked at me like he saw through the walls I built. It scared me. He's 38 now, tall and built like someone who grew up working with his hands, mechanic turned construction supervisor. There's a stillness in him that draws people in. You feel safe around Daniel. Too safe. Over the years, our conversations moved from casual to intimate. We talked about music, philosophy, what it means to be a man, and what it means to be broken. There were nights we'd sit on the porch drinking beer after Marlene had gone to bed, just talking. Or not talking. Sometimes the silence said more. I started to notice things last year. The way his gaze would linger, not inappropriate but deep. Studying. Curious. I noticed how my body responded too, how my chest tightened when he touched my shoulder, how I paid attention to his voice more than I should have. I hated myself for it. I remember one night clearly. We were alone, watching a movie in the dark. My leg brushed his. It should have been nothing. But neither of us moved. The tension crackled. My heart was a drum inside my chest. He finally stood up and said he was tired. But before walking away, he paused and turned. You ever feel like something's pulling you toward something that makes no sense? He asked. I just nodded. That was the first time we acknowledged it without saying it. After that, everything shifted. Every interaction became hyper-aware. When he handed me a coffee, our fingers would touch for a second too long. When we passed each other in the hallway, our eyes would lock like magnet. Nothing had happened. And yet, everything had. I started avoiding him, but that didn't help. It only made the air between us denser. I couldn't talk to my friends about it. Who do you tell that you're half in love with your stepfather? Then came the night that broke the boundary, at least emotionally. Marlene had flown to Chicago for a conference. I was in the kitchen at midnight, rummaging for cereal. Daniel walked in wearing sweatpants and a tired look. He poured himself a drink and joined me at the table. You ever feel like you're just pretending to be someone? I asked, suddenly braver than I meant to be. He looked at me, really looked. Every damn day. That was all it took. The words opened a floodgate. I told him things I hadn't told anyone, about feeling empty, about not fitting anywhere, about being unsure of who I even was. He listened like every word mattered. Like I mattered. You're not broken, he said quietly, his hand resting on mine. You're just waiting to be seen. His touch stayed. He didn't pull back. Neither did I. The silence was thunderous. But then he stood, quickly, like he'd touched fire. Good night, he said, almost like a warning. I couldn't sleep that night. I didn't know if I'd crossed a line, or if we both had. After that, things weren't the same. We avoided being alone together. When we did speak, it was shorter, tenser. And yet, the distance only made the desire more vivid. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what I even wanted, except that I wanted him. And I knew, deep down, he wanted me too. Still, nothing had happened. Nothing anyone could prove. It was all looks and silence and charged space. but I could feel something swelling between us, like an earthquake waiting beneath the floorboards. That's when I realized this wasn't a phase or a mistake. It was real. It was dangerous. And it was just the beginning. Marlene left again that weekend. A 3-day retreat in Seattle, some leadership conference she was too excited about. She kissed Daniel goodbye at the door, her suitcase rolling behind her like a forgotten child. I watched from the stairs, silent, heart thudding. As the car pulled away, the house felt heavier. Daniel barely spoke the first few hours. He cleaned the garage, cooked dinner, then vanished into the den. I stayed upstairs, trying to distract myself with noise, music, games, anything. But nothing drowned out the pressure building in my chest. At midnight, I found him outside, sitting on the porch with a glass of whiskey in one hand, his phone in the other, screen off. He was just staring into the night. "You okay?" I asked, voice quiet. He looked up. The porch light caught the stubble on his jaw and the tightness in his eyes. "I don't know," he said honestly. I sat beside him. We didn't talk for a while. Then, without turning to me, he said, "Do you ever wish you could undo certain feelings?" I swallowed hard. "Every day." He finally looked at me. And that look, it was everything. Fear, desire, confusion. The kind of look people share before crossing a line they can't come back from. "Drink," he offered. I nodded. He went inside and returned with a second glass. We drank in silence for a few minutes. The whiskey burned my throat, but I didn't flinch. I needed something to numb the tremor beneath my skin. "I think about that night," he said. "I know," I replied. The air between us thickened. Every second felt like a dare. I was either going to run or fall. "Maybe we should talk about it," he said. "No," I said. "Talking will only make it worse." He turned fully toward me. "Then what do you want from me, Caleb?" It wasn't a challenge. It was a surrender. I leaned in before I even realized what I was doing. My lips hovered near his. I could feel his breath, hesitant, warm, trembling. We didn't kiss. Not yet. "You want this too," I whispered. He nodded. Barely. But it was enough. The first kiss wasn't gentle. It wasn't hesitant. It was years of silence, shame, and hunger crashing all at once. His hands went to my back, mine to his face. He pulled me closer like he'd been waiting forever. The porch creaked under us as we lost ourselves. We didn't go inside. We didn't need a bed, not that night. The moment was raw, almost reckless. His hands knew what they wanted, and so did mine. But it wasn't just physical, it was emotional overload. Every touch said, "I see you." Every breath was a confession. After, we sat there, legs tangled, wrapped in a blanket of stunned silence. He smoked a cigarette with shaking hands. "This can't happen again," he said. I nodded. "Okay." We both knew we were lying. The next morning was the quietest morning of my life. We didn't speak, just passed each other in the kitchen like strangers. I couldn't meet his eyes. I was afraid of what I might see: regret, shame, disgust. But all I saw was fear. That afternoon, Marlene called. I watched Daniel talk to her in the hallway. His voice softened the way it always did when she spoke. But his eyes flicked toward me, guilt flooding his expression like spilled ink. That night, I dreamed about him. Not the kiss, not the sex, just him. Laughing. Holding me. Like it was okay. The following week became a pattern. Glances. Accidental touches. Long, charged silences. We stayed apart during the day. But at night, something always pulled us back. The second time it happened, we were both sober. It was quieter. Slower. More deliberate. He touched my face like he was memorizing it. I kissed him like I was afraid it might be the last time. There was no rushing, no panic, just quiet worship. I wanted all of him, and he gave it. After, he held me close. His voice cracked when he said, "I never wanted to be this kind of man." "You're not," I told him. "You're just human." But he didn't answer. His silence said more than words ever could. We tried to stay away. We really did. But we failed. Over and over. We kept slipping, into bedrooms, into each other, into secrets. Marlene never suspected a thing. She smiled when we sat together at dinner, oblivious to the war beneath the table. She trusted us completely. And that made it worse. Guilt and desire became twin flames, burning behind our eyes. I hated myself, then craved him again the next night. He'd pace the hallway, then knock softly at my door. We'd tell ourselves this is the last time, but we both knew it never was. One night after, he looked at me and said, "What if we're in love?" I didn't know how to answer, because I already knew we were. And I also knew we were one secret away from losing everything. The house never felt more fragile than it did the week after Daniel said he might love me. Every door creaked like it held a secret. Every silence between us echoed with what we weren't supposed to be. Marlene came home early. She was supposed to arrive Sunday evening. She walked through the front door on Saturday morning, suitcase in hand and a coffee balanced precariously on top. "Surprise," she said with a bright grin. Flight got bumped up. Daniel and I were in the kitchen. I was still in his t-shirt. He froze. I turned ghost white. "What's going on?" she asked, laughing at first, until her smile dropped. Her eyes landed on my shirt, then flicked to Daniel's expression. Something in her face cracked. "No," she whispered. "Tell me I'm imagining this." Silence. She looked at Daniel, not me. "Daniel, tell me that what I'm thinking isn't true." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Say it," she screamed. I stepped forward, trembling. "Marlene." She held up her hand. Don't speak. Don't call me by my name like you're not the reason it's burning in my throat right now." Her voice was sharp, but her eyes were pure devastation. She backed away like we were poison. "You too," she laughed bitterly, pressing her hand to her chest. "You disgust me." Daniel tried to reach for her. "Please, listen to me." "No. You slept with my son." "He's not your son," he said without thinking. And that was it. The final break. Her hand met his face with a crack that echoed through the kitchen. She turned to me. "And you let him ruin our home. You ruined me." She didn't stay. She packed a bag, called a cab, and left. No dramatic speech. No screaming as the car pulled away. Just the echo of a door closing that neither of us could reopen. The next few days were brutal. Daniel didn't go to work. I didn't leave the house. We sat in silence, orbiting each other like ghosts. He cried once, late at night when he thought I was asleep. I heard him through the wall, sobbing into his hands. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just felt numb. The phone rang constantly. Family. Friends. Even her sister, who I barely spoke to, left voicemails full of disbelief. "She's crushed," one message said. "You broke her. Both of you." Daniel lost his job 2 weeks later. Word spread fast. Someone in the neighborhood must have talked. Or maybe Marlene told someone. Either way, they let him go for reputational concerns. I stopped attending classes. My friends stopped answering texts. One even blocked me. I didn't blame them. What do you say to the guy who had an affair with his stepfather? We thought about splitting. We really did. There were nights we sat on opposite sides of the couch, not touching, wondering aloud if walking away would be the right thing. But then he'd look at me, eyes hollow, and say, "I don't know how to breathe without you anymore." And I'd say, "Neither do I." So we left. Quietly. Packed what we needed, sold what we didn't. Moved 2 cities away. Somewhere no one knew our names. A place where we weren't Caleb and Daniel, the scandal. They didn't know our story. We could lie, for once. Pretend. We found a small apartment above a bakery. The walls were thin and the floors creaked, but we didn't care. We could hold hands in the dark and sleep without fearing footsteps in the hallway. The guilt didn't vanish, but it softened. One night, sitting on the fire escape, Daniel asked me, "Do you think she'll ever forgive us?" I stared at the stars. "No." He nodded, like he already knew. "But maybe one day," I added, We'll learn how to forgive ourselves. He turned to me, his voice barely a whisper. Even if the world thinks we're wrong, you're the only thing that's ever felt right. That's when I knew I wasn't going back. Not to who I was, not to who they wanted me to be. We weren't saints. We weren't victims. We were just two broken men who found something whole in each other. And even if it cost us everything, we couldn't let it go. Love isn't just fire, it's also the smoke after. The silence, the rebuilding, the slow realization that survival costs more than passion. After we left everything behind, Daniel and I had to learn how to live. Not just exist in stolen moments. The first few months in the new city were quiet, almost too quiet. Our world had shrunk to 2 rooms and each other. Some days that felt like enough. Other days it felt like a cage. Daniel picked up construction work again, under the table. The kind of jobs that don't ask too many questions. I got a remote freelance gig writing product descriptions for some cheap e-commerce site. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough for rent and groceries. But money wasn't the hard part. It was the guilt. Every morning, I'd catch myself looking at the phone, wondering if Marlene would ever call. She never did. And Daniel, he carried it differently, quietly. But I'd see it in the way he flinched when certain commercials played, or how he avoided mirrors longer than necessary. Shame lives in the body. We started therapy. Separately, then together. The counselor didn't blink when we explained our story. She only asked, "Do you love each other?" "Yes," we said in unison. No hesitation. "Then the work begins there," she said. And it did. We peeled ourselves apart, memory by memory, trauma by trauma. We talked about what it meant for me to have needed a father figure, and what it meant for him to feel like he betrayed that role. We screamed. We cried. We confessed things that hurt to say. And through it all, we never let go. Daniel told me once, during a session, I didn't know I could love someone this deeply without hating myself for it. I said, that's what healing feels like. It doesn't erase the damage. It just teaches you how to live in the aftermath. After almost a year, something changed. One day we went to the local park. A normal afternoon, sunlight filtering through the trees, kids laughing in the distance. We weren't hiding. We weren't whispering. We were just being. He took my hand on the bench. No one stared. No one shouted. It was small, but monumental. We started making friends again. Slowly. People who didn't care about our last names or history. Just who we were. We never told anyone the full story, not at first. But it didn't matter. They saw the love in how we moved around each other, and that was enough. Still, there was a hole. A question that burned quietly in the background. One night, Daniel sat me down and said, I want to marry you. My heart stuttered. He continued, not to prove anything. Not to erase the past. But because I choose you. And I want to keep choosing you, every day. I said yes. We didn't invite family. Didn't wear suits. It was a courthouse wedding with coffee after. Just us, a witness, and a signature. But that night, lying beside him in our tiny bed, I felt more committed than I ever had in my life. Marriage didn't fix everything, but it was a promise to keep walking through the fire together. A few months later, I sent Marlene a letter. Not to ask for forgiveness, but to tell her I was okay. That Daniel and I were okay. That I hoped she found her own peace. She never responded. But I didn't send it for closure. I sent it because silence had ruled my life too long. These days we laugh more than we cry. We've learned how to be tender without guilt, how to argue without imploding. We cook dinner together, dance in the living room, plan road trips we may never take. We are not perfect, but we are real. Daniel says sometimes, I still don't know how we made it through. I say, because we stopped lying to ourselves. People always talk about forbidden love like it's romantic. But they rarely talk about what comes after the fall, the rebuilding, the doubt, the long nights of wondering if you deserve happiness at all. But we do. We earned it. Every scar, every tear, every sleepless night, we paid the price. Now, when he says I love you, I believe it without flinching. Now, when I look at myself in the mirror, I see more than the boy who made the world burn. I see a man who loved boldly, who chose love over fear, and who, against all odds, found someone who did the same.